later named S-6B. It used data from the aircraft's yaw and pitch axis, as well as other sources to give accurate aim for the weaponry. Range data could be taken from the radar or set manually by the pilot. Weaponry on the J-35 consisted of two fixed 30mm Aden cannons, Swedish designation 30mm Aken M/55, in the wings with 90 rounds per gun. For external ordnance, the J-35 had 9 hard points, 8 under the wings and 1 on the belly. 6 of the wing hard points were for mounting 13.5 cm Strak M/56 high explosive air-to-ground rockets. The other 2 wing hard points were for mounting AIM-9B Sidewinder air-to-air missiles, Swedish designation RB-24. Rockets and missiles could not be mounted simultaneously on the wings. The belly hardpoint could mount either 2 RB-24 Sidewinders or a 530-liter drop tank. Saab 35B, Bertil, edit. Fighter version designated J-35B, Bertil. 73 aircraft, 3520135273, including test aircraft, were built and delivered between February 1962 and March 1963. The J-35B was initially planned to be designated J-35B1, before being renamed to just J-35B in January 1960. 72 J-35B1 were ordered on the 28th of February 1958. 25 of these were to receive the 25 Saab 35 front sections left over from the Saab 35C conversion, but modified to Saab 35B standard. Due to manufacturing issues, delivery delays occurred for some J-35B subsystems, resulting in that the J-35B initially being delivered with only parts of the planned avionics installed. This resulted in there being 2 primary subvariants of the J-35B historically. One J-35B initial day fighter version of the J-35B. It lacked a radar and featured old for anti-gyroscope gun sights taken from scrapped Saab J-29 and B fighters called Reflex-Seeked 4E/35. These aircraft were designated J-35B, i.e. prime, Swedish, prim, to indicate that they were not completed vehicles. However, some sources calls these aircraft J-35B1 instead of J-35B. Even though it lacked a radar, it was fully armed with cannons, rockets and missiles. It was also compatible with Strel 60. 72 built between February 1962 and March 1963. 2 J-35B later all-weather fighter version of the J-35B. Featured a PS-03 radar and S-7A2 radar gun sight, as well as the rest of the initially planned equipment and avionics. 69 aircraft converted from the remaining J-35B, prim, between 1964 and 1966. Aircraft were sent to Saab for conversion between 1964 and 1965 and redelivered between January 1965 to June 1966. The base aircraft of the Saab 35B was identical to the J-35A2 and featured the same engine and afterburner, the RM6BS and EBK-66. Distinctive from the J-35A, however, was that the J-35B was fully integrated into the Swedish Strel 60 system, a combat guidance and air surveillance system. As part of Strel 60, it was also the first Swedish aircraft fitted with a control data system, Swedish ST-data system, which allowed ground control to send digital orders to the aircraft. These orders were then stored in the aircraft's computers so the pilot could read the order several times and didn't have to memorize the content. The radar on the J-35B was a Swedish-developed radar from LME designated PS-03/0. It was superior and more advanced compared to the French PS-02 used on the J-35O. The gun sight was an advanced radar gun sight developed by Saab for both the J-35B and J-35D called S-7A2. It used data from, among others, the aircraft's yaw and pitch axis, as well as the PS-03 forward/a radar. It was specifically designed for head-on attacks with air-to-air rockets, something the J-35A did not have access to. Weaponry on the J-35B was for the most part equivalent to the J-35O, but the fixed 30mm ACAN-M forward/55 ADEN cannons in the wings had 100 rounds per gun, and the aircraft had gained the ability to use 75mm SRAC-M forward/57 air-to-air rockets. The rockets were fired from RACAP's M forward/57 rocket pods mounted in pairs on the sidewinder belly pylon, each holding 19 rockets. Saab 35C, Caesar, edit. Twin-seat trainer version designated SK35C, Caesar. 25 aircraft, 3580135825, converted from J-35A1S. Adamcut, between April 1961 to August 1962 by rebuilding the front section of the aircraft, not including the prototype, 35,800, which flew on the 30th of December 1959, and was privately owned by Saab. The SK-35C was initially planned to be designated J-35C, before being renamed to SK-35C in January 1960. The 25 SK-35C, J-35C, front sections were ordered on the 24th of August 1956. The Caesar version lacked armament, but the minor modification meant that the aircraft could easily be converted back to J-35A standard if necessary. However, the prototype, 35,800, was used by Saab to trial the RB-05 air-to-ground missile. Saab 35D, David, edit. Fighter version designated J-35D, David. 120 aircraft, 3527435393. Delivered between May 1963 and April 1965 in 3 series. The J-35D was initially planned to be designated J-35B2, before being renamed to J-35D in January 1960. 62 J-35B2 were ordered on the 15th of November 1958, with a further 60 aircraft, meant to be converted to S-35B2, S-35E, reconnaissance aircraft, being planned to be ordered in November 1960. In the end, only 30 Davids, all of Series 1, was converted to S-35E standard, having first served as a fighter aircraft between May 1963 and January 1964. Due to manufacturing issues, delivery delays occurred for some J-35D subsystems, resulting in that the 2 initial J-35D series being delivered with only parts of the planned avionics installed. Series 3, however, was delivered with complete avionics, resulting in there being 2 primary subvariants of the J-35D initially. One J-35D, one initial day fighter version of the J-35D. It lacked a radar and featured old for anti-gyroscope gun sights taken from scrapped Saab J-29A and B fighters called reflex-seeked 4E forward/35. Even though it lacked a radar, it was fully armed with cannons, rockets and missiles. It was also compatible with Stroll 60. 30 aircraft delivered as Series 1 between May 1963 to January 1964. But quickly put aside for S-35E conversion, and 24 aircraft delivered as Series 2 between January 1964 to May 1964. Two J-35D2 later all-weather fighter version of the J-35D. Featured a PS-03 forward/a radar and S-7A2 radar gun sight, as well as the rest of the initially planned equipment and avionics. 66 aircraft delivered as Series 3 between June 1964 to May 1965. Remaining J-35D1 from Series 2 were modified to J-35D2 standard throughout 1967 to 1968 by CVV Haslo, Centrale Flygverkstaden Vastras, and respective air units, after which, the D1 and D2 suffixes were dropped in favor of just D. The Saab 35D base aircraft differed quite a lot compared to previous variants. For one, it was fitted with the much stronger Rolls-Royce Avon Mk.60, Avon 300 series, engine, Swedish designation RM6CS, which was license-produced by SFA, today Volvo Aero, and fitted with a Swedish-developed afterburner, EBK67, which could deliver 77.3 kN of thrust when using its afterburner. Secondly, the David featured increased internal fuel capacity for longer range. It also featured two hardpoints on the belly to be able to mount two 500-liter external drop tanks for even longer range missions, compared to one 530-liter drop tank for the 35O, B and C. Despite having more fuel than its predecessors, the David was the fastest Draken version, capable of accelerating until out of fuel. In terms of armament and avionics, the J-35D was almost identical to the J-35B. It was fully integrated into the Swedish Stral 60 system and was also fitted with a control data system, allowing the aircraft to receive digital orders from ground control. It also featured the same PS-03 forward/a radar and S-7A2 radar gun sight as the J-35B. Weaponry on the J-35D was at least initially equivalent to the J-35B. It had two 30mm Aken M forward/55 Aden cannons in the wings with 100 rounds per gun, 4 inward hard points, 1 under each wing and 2 on the belly, for external air-to-air ordnance, as well as 6 outer hardpoints for air-to-ground rockets. In 1977, however, a new type of air-to-ground rocket became available to the J-35D, the 14.5 cm PSRAC M49 forward/56 high-explosive anti-tank rocket, and in 1978, a new type of air-to-air missile, the AIM-9J Sidewinder, Swedish designation RB-24J, later modified with an Ericsson laser proximity fuse, making it equivalent to the AIM-9P3. Something noteworthy is that the J-35D was the last Swedish Draken variant fitted with 2 guns. Saab 35E, Erik, edit. Reconnaissance version of the Saab 35D designated S-35E, Erik. 60 aircraft, 3590-1 35960, including test aircraft, built between 1963 and 1968 in 2 series. The S-35E was initially planned to be designated S-35B2, before being renamed to S-35E in January 1960. In 1958 the SAF planned to order 60 J-35B2, J-35D, fighters in November 1960, which were intended to be converted to S-35B2, S-35E, reconnaissance aircraft at a later date. In the end, 30 S-35E were produced as new aircraft, 3590 to 35931, and delivered between July 1965 to May 1966 as Series 1, while 28 S-35E were converted from J-35D, 3593 to 35959, and delivered between October 1966 to January 1968 as Series 2. 2 more aircraft, S-35E, 35901, and S-35E, 35960, were also converted from David's but never delivered to the SAF. The base aircraft of the Saab 35E was almost identical to the J-35D and featured the same engine and afterburner, the RM-6CS and EBK-67. It differed however in that it had no armament or radar, as to make space for 9 Vinton cameras, 5 in the nose and 4 in the fuselage, some mounted upright, others mounted obliquely. The aircraft was however fitted with a radar warning receiver and could mount a countermeasure pod named Capsule KB with chaff and flare dispensers under the wings to increase its survivability. The aircraft had 4 primary hardpoints in total for external ordnance, 1 under each wing and 2 on the belly. For long-range missions it was possible to mount up to 4 drop tanks on these hardpoints. For night missions it could carry an active infrared reconnaissance system of EG&G design in a pod fitted to a belly hardpoint. Saab 35F, Philip, edit. Fighter version designated J-35F, Philip. Delivered between 1965 and 1972, total production, 230. This variant had improved electronics and avionics, for example integrated radar, aim and missile systems, introducing the capability to use semi-active radar homing, SA, and infrared homing, IR, versions of the Hughes Falcon missile, RB-27, HM-55/AIM-26B export, and RB-28, HM-58/AIM-4C export, respectively, originally intended for the J-35D. To make space for more avionics, the left cannon was removed, with ammunition increased to 120 rounds for the right cannon as compensation. The J-35F existed in 2 primary variants. One J-35F, one initial version without an infrared search and track sensor under the nose. 2 J-35F, 2 later version with a Hughes N71 infrared search and track sensor under the nose, IR Spanaria 71N. This was a change in the production line from the No 35501 airframe. The Hall mods I and II were carried out on the P/S01/011 radar sets in the early 1980s to improve resistance to ECM. Saab 35G, Gustav, edit. Attacker version designated J-35G, Gustav. 70 aircraft suggested to be converted from J-35DS, but the project was cancelled early on. The Gustav version was specifically going to be able to carry the Saab RB-05 air-to-ground missile. Saab 35J, Johan, edit. Fighter version designated J-35J, Johan. In 1985 the Swedish government decided to modify 67 J-35F2S to the J-35J standard. The aircraft received a longer lifespan, modernized electronics, a modernized cannon, 2 additional hardpoints under the intakes for extra AIM-9 sidewinder pylons, Borg G, pylon G, and increased external fuel capacity. The modification took place between 1987 and 1991. The final operational J-35J flew for the last time in 1999. 1. J-35J with G pylons under the intakes. 2. Pylon G, Borg G, with an inert RB-24J, AIM-9J/P3. 3. Hughes N71 IRST tracker, IR Spanaria 71N, on the J-35J. Proposed modifications, edit. Before it was decided to develop the JAS-39 Gripen in the 1970s, studies were undertaken on modification for low-flight hour J-35F airframes. 35 Mod Level 1B, essentially the aircraft that became the J-35J. 35 Mod Level 4, the most ambitious modification in the program. The proposed modifications were new outer wing, additional weapon stations, RBS-15 capability, the addition of canards by the air intakes for increased maneuverability, and maximum takeoff weight increased to 15,000 kg. Export variants, edit. Export attempts of the Saab 35 started even before the aircraft had finished development in Sweden. During the late 1950s, Saab would offer the aircraft to, among others, the West German Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force and the Swiss Air Force. Saab 35H, Helvetia, edit. Saab 35H, Helge, was a proposed export version of the J-35D for the Swiss Air Force in 1958. H stands for Helvetia, Switzerland in Latin. One demonstrator built from the FPL-35-5 prototype competed and lost out against the Dassault Mirage IIIS. None sold or delivered. The trial and procurement of the Mirage 3 was however faulty, leading to a scandal after severe budget overruns. The Swiss Air Force commander, the Chief of the General Staff and the Minister of Defense were forced to resign as a result. During trials, the Saab 35H demonstrated a climb rate 20–40% superior to the Mirage 3 and had a 35% shorter takeoff run. Saab 35X, export, edit. Saab 35X, Xerxes, was a series of export variants of the J-35D and J-35F that Saab offered throughout the 1960s, 1970s and 1980s. X stands for export. The Saab 35X were offered to Belgium in 1967, Argentina in 1968, Venezuela in 1969, Chile in 1971, Singapore in 1975, Tunisia in 1976 and Malaysia in 1980. However, none of the aforementioned countries purchased the Saab 35 in the end. Saab 35XD, export Denmark, edit. Saab 35XD, Xerxes David, was an export fighter bomber version of the Saab 35F for the Royal Danish Air Force. X stands for export and D for Denmark. It competed and won against the Mirage 3 and the Northrop F5 in 1968. 3 variants of the Saab 35XD were produced, all with similar ordnance capabilities. 1 F-35, Saab 35XD, single-seat attack version. 20 built. 2 RF-35, Saab S-35XD, single-seat reconnaissance version with a camera nose similar to the Saab 35E. Could not equip the AGM-12B bullpup. 20 built. 3 TF-35, Saab SK-35XD, two-seat trainer aircraft with only one cannon. 11 built, 6 initially, 5 later. 1. F-35 Draken, pre-WDNS. 2. RF-35 Draken, pre-WDNS. 3. TF-35 Draken, pre-WDNS. 1. F-35 Draken, post-WDNS. 2. RF-35 Draken, post-WDNS. 3. TF-35 Draken, post-WDNS. Denmark wanted to acquire a third and fourth Saab 35XD squadron, 2346 aircraft, following the initial purchase, and prices were handed over the 14th of August, 1970. Negotiations continued during the spring of 1971 and an offer was made on the 1st of May, 1971. The Danish interest focused on a radar by LME called SAX 500, a new navigation system and an effective ordnance amine system, such as the Saab BT-9. However, due to cutbacks of the Danish Air Force made during the winter 1970-1971, from 7 squadrons to 4, it was not possible to acquire these aircraft. Following the cancellation of more Danish 35XD aircraft, Saab offered the Danish Air Force 2 low-price Draken ground attack variants based on the Saab 35F in 1971. One Saab 35FD single-seat attack version for Denmark based on the Saab 35F. The suffix FD stands for F version, Denmark. Unknown differences to the HOG variant below. 2 Saab 35FD HOG single-seat attack version for Denmark based on the Saab 35F. The suffix HOG is Swedish for high. This version was planned to be fitted with a Weapon Delivery and Navigation System, WDNS. The Saab 35FD project was cancelled in October 1971 and no aircraft were acquired. The Saab 35XD was heavily modified to make it into a fighter-bomber aircraft. Compared to the Swedish versions, the outer wings were completely redesigned and the aircraft featured 9 hardpoints in total. It could carry a wide array of NATO ordnance, such as 10,000 pound, 4,535.92 kilograms, of NATO bombs, but also Mighty Mouse rockets and AGM-12B bullpup missiles. For air defense it featured 2 30mm Aden cannons and could also mount 2 AIM-9B sidewinders, later AIM-9N2S, on the utmost hard points. It lacked a radar and had a counterweight in the nose instead. The Saab 35XD was however fitted with a ballistic computer from Saab called BT-9R. It worked with both bombs and rockets and even allowed for toss bombing. During the 1970s the Danish Drakens received new altimeters, US ALR-45 radar warning receivers, later upgraded to ALR-65, and chaff and flare dispensers in their tail cones. During the 1980s the Danish Drakens got an upgrade called WDNS, Weapon Delivery and Navigation System. This upgrade most notably included a Marconi 900 series HUD and a for anti-LRMTS, laser rangefinder and marked target seeker, which required a new nose to be installed on the F-35 and TF-35. This nose was the same as the one used on the RF-35 but lacked camera windows on the side. Electronic warfare capability was also improved as the Danish Drakens were fitted with ALR-69 radar warning receivers, with 6 antennas on the vertical fin, 2 on each wingtip and 2 under the nose, and the ability to carry ALQ-162 jammer pods under the wingtips. The last upgrade was completed in 1986 and updated the systems for weapon aiming and navigation accuracy to a similar capacity to those of the Danish Air Force's General Dynamics F-16 Fighting Falcons. Somewhere during its service life the Danish Drakens also lost their ability to mount AGM-12B bullpups. Saab 35XS, Export Suomi, edit. Saab 35XS, Xerxes was an export variant of the Saab 35F Interceptor for the Finnish Air Force. X stands for export and S stands for Suomi, Finland in Finnish. The Saab 35XS was sold as part of larger Finnish-Swedish collaboration program to provide the Finnish Air Force with Saab 35 aircraft, starting from 1970. Sweden would provide the Finnish Air Force with second-hand J-35F1S, J-35BS and SK-35CS, with the Saab 35XS being produced by Saab in Sweden as kits to be assembled under license by Valmet in Finland. Valmet also got a license to produce spare parts. The Finnish Air Force gave the Saab 35 the type designation DK, from Draken, although for practical use they reused the Swedish designations, but with the prefixes omitted and with an S added at the end: 35BS, 35CS, 35FS, with the exception of the Saab 35XS, which was simply named 35S. On rare occasions the DK designation received a third letter to indicate model, DKS 435S, etc. As part of the Saab 35 adoption,